And we might as well move on to topic number 2, Zach, because man, oh man, this is going to be a topic right here. Saquon Barkley, all the running backs in particular across the league. We are in a crisis right now in the NFL when talking about the running back position. So Saquon Barkley in particular is a real threat to hold out without a new contract. So the question that we have, is there a happy medium when discussing the current running back market, Zach?
Yeah, this is a really interesting topic. I'm happy we have the opportunity to talk about it. And it's crazy. It doesn't really seem like that long ago when we were doing fantasy football drafts. It's obviously very popular. Everyone plays it, where you'd be drafting like every pick in the first round to start. Running back, running back, running back, running back. That is no longer the case. We see wide receivers going, and this position is currently in a crisis. And I'll start off by saying this, right? My initial argument, like we just saw in the past year's NFL draft, right? We saw the Falcons take Bijan Robinson. We saw the Lions take Jahmyr Gibbs. I understand the argument of just like from overall perspective, like a far perspective, people don't love the idea of taking running backs in the first round because it kind of limits you. Like at the best, you're going to have that player playing at a high level for 4 or 5 years. And then if you're smart, you're going to move on. And sometimes it could be tough to take a draft, with a draft pick. Like you never want to cap a player's ceiling. Like when you take someone in the first round, ideally you want that player being a premium guy for you for the next 6-7 years if it works out. But with the running back position, that right off the bat is lowered to like a 4 or 5 year stretch. But even though this pick in particular didn't work out, right? Just an example. I understood what the Chiefs were doing, taking Clyde Edwards-Helaire from a team in their position, considering they just won the Super Bowl. It was the last pick of the first round. And when you're a team that's already really good and you don't think there are a ton of premium guys out there late in the first round, if you want to take a running back that you think would improve your team, go for it. And it didn't work out. Kansas City, it's crazy. So the last 5 Super Bowl champions, right? Let's look at the running backs for those teams, right? Crazy enough, this is a total coincidence. This guy actually just re-signed with the Rams today, but Sony Michel, he led the Patriots in rushing when they won their last Super Bowl with Tom Brady in 2018. The next year, you had Kansas City winning the Super Bowl with Damian Williams. He was phenomenal in that game, a guy that they didn't spend a lot of money on. The following year, you had Sony Michel again leading it for the Rams. You had Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette. Leonard Fournette was cut by the Jaguars before he signed with Tampa Bay. Ronald Jones was like a 3rd-round pick. And then this past year, we just saw it with Pacheco. He was a 7th-round pick. So the last few teams that have won the Super Bowl, they haven't really spent a lot of money on the running back position. And when it comes to the guys that are in the news right now, Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs, I think it's a unique position their teams are in because the New York Giants, like they drafted Saquon Barkley with the number 2 overall pick. And I understand everyone is going to have their different opinions on, what was the main reason why the New York Giants were so good this past season? Was it Daniel Jones? Was it Saquon Barkley? Was it Brian Dable? But I'm curious to see what the Giants would look like without Saquon Barkley if you take him away from their team. Because with Barkley, it's also interesting. He had one really good year, his rookie year, right? And he was obviously really good last year. But the 3 years in between, he's been in the league for 5 years, he had a bad injury and he didn't really produce much. So it is just a fine line when it comes to the running back position. I think if I were Roger Goodell, honestly, I might consider like starting a fund of some kind, maybe built around the best former running backs in the league, and maybe try saying to these guys like, look, we understand why you're upset, but right now in the league, there is not too much of a premium. There isn't too much of a market for guys in your position. Let's kind of give like a bonus, like, if you score 10 touchdowns in a season, you get this amount of money. If you run for this amount of yards, you get this amount of money, because clearly the running back position, they aren't getting compensated properly, but you understand why from the team's perspective. And one last point I'll make on a guy like Dalvin Cook, right? He got cut pretty late in the offseason and he's still looking for a new team. I think it would have been better for Dalvin Cook to get cut late or earlier in the offseason, I should say, because now I don't think he's going to get the amount of money he's seeking for. Like he wants around $10-11 million per year. There aren't a lot of teams that are going to be willing to give him that in late June, because the NFL offseason, it's almost over. Like all of these teams' cap space is basically over and done with. They left the offseason with a certain amount of cap space, and not a lot of teams are going to be willing or able to pay Dalvin Cook that money at this point in the offseason so late. So I definitely think it is a tough time to be an NFL running back right now. If I was a parent, that would be the one position I would not want my kid to play if he was coming up starting as a football player. So it's a tough time to be an NFL running back right now, and I definitely think there might not be a happy medium. It's definitely a tough time.
Yeah, definitely. It's hard trying to find that happy medium. You know, I want to go back to the roots of everything, right? I always like to attack subjects from the root. And when you talk about the NFLPA, and I discussed this when I talked about Lamar Jackson's situation and that franchise tag that exists in the NFL, that should have been abolished before they agreed to the new CBA, right? And now, when you talk about what the franchise tag is, the definition is basically essentially team control. That's basically what that is. Like, if you want to talk about the real definition of it, it's team control and team leverage. And all these executives, they have the power to enforce a 1-year deal in the prime of a running back's career. So, for example, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs, I'm going to tag you, and you have to sign the tag. And if you don't, then you at your own risk there. So you're enforcing a 1-year deal, basically. And that's what that is. So, like, if you talk about when this CBA ends, it doesn't end until 2030. So until 2030, I can't find you a happy medium. The only medium I can find you, the running backs here I'm talking to, is when it's time to renegotiate the new CBA, because you need to abolish the franchise tag. Either pay you or let you go. And let's say hypothetically, if there wasn't no franchise tag right now, then Saquon Barkley could go to another team and get a couple more dollars, a couple more million. So let's say hypothetically he's a free agent, right? All right, I'll take the best offer on the table, so I can kind of get my leverage mapped out a little bit. If this team offer me even $1 more million than what my present team is offering me, I'll just sign there. So the franchise tag needs to go, and that's where the happy medium is for me. Now, of course, Zach, you brought up a theory with incentives and stuff like that. I thought about that too. An incentive, situation where you score this amount of touchdowns, you get these type of bonuses. That's fine too. But when you talk about eliminating the situation, like as best as you can, because I don't think you can never eliminate this situation. Let's call a spade a spade. The running back position is devalued in the NFL. There's certain jobs in America that's devalued if you want to look at it from a broader scale, right? Teachers get paid $50,000 a year when there's other jobs that's making way more than that, right? It's about the value on the market. It's about the value in the market in the corporation of the NFL. And the running backs don't have no market. So if there's any way you can try to find the happy medium, because that's the definition of a happy medium, it's basically, meeting each other halfway. Remove the franchise tag. Other than that, I really don't got no answers as far as that is concerned. But I do have some takes about this running back market as a whole. When you look at it,
can I just say real quick? I'll say this in response to that. So the interesting thing is, I just want to explain. I know most people that are listening know, but like the franchise tag, right? When you get tagged, even though I understand why players don't like it, especially running backs. You don't have a lot of insurance. It's literally a 1-year deal, but at the end of the day, you still are making the average amount of the top 5 players at your position. So even though it's only 1 year, if you do get franchise tag, like it is a good thing. Like you are making a ton of money. And Saquon Barkley, again, he was the number 2 overall pick in the draft. So he's made, I just have it right here, an estimate, about $38 million throughout his first 5 years of his career. So again, he had a great rookie year, was really good last year. But for the 3 years in between, he really wasn't good. And if let's say you eliminate the franchise tag, right? Just looking at it from the team perspective.
I do want to respond to that though, because you are making the top 5 for that 1 year. So after that franchise tag, they can let you walk. Like they can literally cut you into the market. So that's the thing about it. It's a 1-year extension in the prime of your career where you're missing out on that long-term contract. That's what it comes down to. I want a long-term contract. It's not about the 1 year, because it's the same thing with Lamar Jackson. He would have been making around the same for 1 year, but it's about the long-term security. That's what these running backs are looking for.
Okay, so let's say Saquon Barkley hits the open market, right? I'm looking at some of the highest paid running backs in the league right now. And the two guys that stand out to me that got big time contracts were Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara. It's important to remember McCaffrey, even though he's on the 49ers, like the big reason why he got traded was because the Panthers paid him and they realized like a year into that deal, like this is not good. Like we're not trying to pay a running back $17 million a year. I'm curious, like the thing that makes Saquon Barkley interesting is that he said he's not even looking for like a deal like that to make him the highest paid running back in the league. He said he's not trying to break the market. If I'm a team, like I don't necessarily know if the running back market is even going to be as good. Like I know it's only 1 year, but would you rather make, $15 million in a 1 year span or have a 4-year deal where you're making like $12 million a year? If Saquon Barkley has one other really good year this year and he hits the open market next year, like he's going to get that deal. So I do think looking at it from the team perspective, I don't necessarily know if hitting the open market is a good thing for a running back when I know it's for only 1 year, but like the Kirk Cousins franchise tag, you are making more money.
And that's where I low-key disagree in a way, because it's like I'm taking into consideration the length years as a running back. It's a different longevity perspective here, a different longevity conversation. Quarterbacks is different in a way. Like you can get tagged and still be in the prime of your career and get another larger contract, I like Kirk Cousins. But it's about the running backs. We know they're going to give you 3 to 5 years, 5 years at maximum of prime years of football. So once that rookie contract is over, I forgot how long a rookie contract is. And like 4 years, right? It's like around 4 years rookie contract. Once that is over, you essentially is literally at the back end of your prime as a running back. So when you do get that tag for that 1 year, although you making top 5, it's going to be hard for you to find that long-term security after that, because now you're looked upon around the league as a declining running back. So after your rookie contract, and this is why this is tough, but I'm trying to bridge the gap of a happy medium here, is if you remove the tag, first of all, it's not only for running backs, it's for everybody. It's for quarterbacks and all the people that just get tagged, and they just, it's like I said, team control. I'm going to control where you go. I'm going to have you for 1 more year. It's not only for running backs, it's for everybody. So I think when you have these conversations, similar to what we are having right now, I think abolishing the franchise tag is in the best interest of the players, because that's what it comes down to. The corporation and the players. And the franchise tag definitely helps the corporation. The only thing that helps the players are no trade clauses. That's like your leverage in today's, sports, especially NFL, is a no trade clause. And damn well running backs ain't getting no daggone no trade clauses. So that's why I think eliminating the tag is a start. And then you could try to see how situations are if, let's say, for example, Saquon Barkley, obviously not then in 2030, but let's say hypothetically that was now, it's going to be interesting. Do you allow Saquon Barkley to go, or do you bring him back knowing how much he means to your organization?
Yeah, and that comes back to the initial question I had. Like, if you're the New York Giants, deep down, how do you really feel? What was the main reason why you were able to win so many games and make the playoffs last year? Was it because of Daniel Jones and the breakout season he had? Was it because of the hiring of Brian Daboll and just how good of a coach he is? Or was it the fact that Saquon Barkley had his best season since his rookie year? And those are the questions they're going to have to answer. But we'll end with this. How do you think the Saquon situation ends? Right now, he doesn't have a contract. He's threatening to hold out mini camp and maybe even training camp once we get there. He already did sit out mini camp. So there are still a ton of questions to answer. Just for some context, Christian McCaffrey, he's the highest paid running back in the league right now, making about $16 million a year. Alvin Kamara coming up pretty close behind him with 15. You then have Derrick Henry, Nick Chubb, and Joe Mixon making around 12. Aaron Jones making around 11. Tony Pollard, he's making around 10. And that's where Barkley and Jacobs are. So that's the thing. Barkley and Jacobs, they're complaining about this, and I understand why. But at the end of the day, both of them are tied for the 8th and 9th highest paid running backs in the league. So they're not at the top, but they're still both top 10 in terms of highest paid running backs in the league. Is there actually a realistic chance that they could jump into that Chubb Henry range where they're in the top 5? Like, would their teams even want to do that? I'm starting to think there is a good chance that I would say more towards Josh Jacobs, that he could be traded by the time we get to the start of the season, and who knows how this is going to end with Saquon.
Yeah, especially with Saquon Barkley. I'm not sure. I don't really know if I could give you a prediction, but I would say I hope it doesn't end like Le'Veon Bell. Like, that's worst case scenario, and I don't think
For
that's
who?
in his
For
best
him?
interest.
For him?
Yeah, for Saquon. And I don't think that's in his best interest because, as you heard with Le'Veon Bell and as you saw with the trajectory of his career, that it wasn't a good decision setting out the whole football season. He was never the same after that. And, his career basically ended because of that. So that's worst case scenario. I'm not sure if they're going to find a happy medium. I do think, it's going to be a long gated process, but who knows? There may be some optimism that they can get a deal done. I believe they offered him a contract. I think was how many million was it? Like 12 million they offered him?
Yeah. So, and that sounds about right. And if that's the thing, like, here's what I'm having a hard time understanding, right? Saquon is out here saying he doesn't want to break the market. He just wants a fair deal that he thinks is worth his value. Yet, the Giants offered him around $12 million, like you just said. He declined it. And if he were to get anything over 12, he'd be at least the third highest paid running back in the league behind McCaffrey and Kamara. So even though he's saying like, oh, I don't want to break the market, I just want what I'm worth. What he's basically saying is he's the third best running back in the league, at least, if not more. So I understand, like, if you're the Giants, why you're not budging. Like, they're in a tough spot as well.
I can see both sides, obviously, because of the injury history that you brought up. Yes, rookie year, great. Last year, phenomenal. What happened in those 3 years? So I see it from their perspective, but I could also make the case that Saquon Barkley is the third best running back in football, in my opinion. I mean, let me think about it more thoroughly. Nick Chubb will obviously be there. CMC will obviously be there. Kamara will obviously be there, but he's right there.
In context, so Derrick Henry is making $12 million a year. Nick Chubb is making $12 million a year. The Giants offered him $12 million a year, and he said no.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fairly good deal for Saquon Barkley in particular, right? In particular, to take that deal based on how the market is. But Zach, I do want to add some more context here before we move on, right? Because I want to focus on just everything from a grand, thing of this conversation, right? The running back market in general. I want to talk about the Lions in a way because I peeped what the Lions were doing. They reshuffled running backs, and I know why they did it. They did it basically what we were talking about the, getting value at the right time. And that's how these teams value running backs. Listen, give me your first 2 years of your rookie deal, and I'm going to reshuffle you after. They did it with Swift. Swift, even though he's young, he had 3 years, in his football length. They traded him for a rookie who was going to give them, the prime of his career. Because literally, when you're a running back, your prime of your career is when you enter the league. So they said, all right, we're going to get rid of an injury-riddled Swift for younger Jamal Gibbs, right? Oh, okay. We're going to get rid of Jamal Williams, who, yes, led the league in touchdowns, but he's, 28 years old or something like that? Yup, 28 years old for David Montgomery, who's 26 and 2 years younger than him. So I think when you look at the running back market and the running back situation, it's about the value in the league. And you look around all these situations. You brought up my Tampa Bay Buccaneers when we won that chip. We had Rojo, Ronald Jones, and we had Fournette. We had a running back by committee, right? You talk about all the running backs by committee. There's a lot of them. Even the Giants, even though they give a lot of volume to Saquon, I saw Matt Breida a couple of times coming in there in the red zone. How I know? Because I was trying to get my fantasy points, okay, my fantasy touchdowns. So I knew, I was well aware that Matt Breida was taken away from my fantasy points because he was out there on the field. You see a lot of, running back tandems. You don't always have your running back out there like that. There's going to be a change of pace back. The Cowboys with Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard, right? That's why Ezekiel Elliott is gone, right? Because he was a number 2 after a while, and he was shot. So there's a lot of, running back by committees. That's the new way to go to keep your running back fresh. And that's why sometimes it does diminish your payroll in a way.
The bell cow running back is officially dead. There aren't really a ton of them left. Good point there. A lot of good duos. But, that's the thing, man. When you see that, the last 5 Super Bowl champions, I'll say it again. The Patriots had Sony Michel. Then you had the Chiefs with Damian Williams. Then you had the Buccaneers with Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette after he got cut from Jacksonville, and then Sony Michel with the Rams and Pacheco last year. Like the teams that are investing highly in running backs, it does not end in a Super Bowl. And that is the ultimate goal. So I understand why a team like the Giants would be a little hesitant to pay Saquon Barkley this much money, especially given the injury history he's had. I understand why the Raiders might be a little hesitant to commit to Josh Jacobs, even though he had a phenomenal year last year. All of these teams, even the 49ers, like, let me ask you this, and maybe we can end with this. Would you consider the McCaffrey trade a success for the 49ers right now?
Yeah, I would. I definitely would. You said?
Even though they haven't won anything, like McCaffrey's the highest paid running back in the league.
I would definitely consider them that move a success because we thought he was declining. He stayed healthy. He brings another element. He brings more weapons to a stacked roster. And who's to say that the 49ers can't win a chip this year? Because they would be one of my teams that I may go with.
Just counter to that real quick. Like he could get hurt here, and then we know he's been there for 8 weeks. I don't even know if we even have enough evidence to say that this is a success or not. And that's my worry. Like if he gets hurt, and we know he's injury prone, like he's been a Niner for only half a season, and it's not like they even got to the Super Bowl. So I
mean, look, they do have Malcolm Mitchell there still, right? Mitchell still Elijah Mitchell. I keep on mixing the
former
Elijah
Patriot,
Mitchell.
Malcolm Mitchell.
He's still on the team, right?
Yeah.
So I think that helps too. That you have that running back in Elijah Mitchell, who was supposed to be the starter, a couple years ago before he got hurt. So I think that could help in a way, and they have a lot of weapons there. So I think certain situations you can afford to take more risk because your championship roster is already there. Like how you made when you talk about the Eagles and a lot of these other teams that can, or the Chiefs, excuse me, that could take a Clyde Edwards-Helaire because they have the roster to contend for a Super Bowl. So even if CMC gets hurt, hypothetically, yes, you're losing money, but I don't think CMC getting hurt will kill our expectations for the 49ers. I will still call them a Super Bowl contending team because they were before they added him. But I do have one question for you, right? And also, real quickly, when you take in consideration the dual threat quarterbacks out here that is also runners, that could play a part in why these running backs are at an all-time low when it comes to their market. But I do have one more question because you mentioned Nick Chubb when you was reading the list of highest paid running backs, and he's making $12 million. Now, I have a question because even though we did see Matt Breida, come in at times, we know that Saquon Barkley is clearly the number one. And we can say the same thing about the Browns. Chubb is the number one. But you also had Kareem Hunt there, who was number two, who got on the field, who was a good pass catcher, probably the better pass catcher out of the two. So you do have a clear number two over there had, right, before you gave him that $12 million. I don't know what, that situation is going to come to with him and Kareem Hunt and the Browns. But I guess my question is, when did you make an argument for Saquon Barkley getting, if not that, a little bit above, being that he's a clear number one? And on the Browns, it was like a 1A, 1B type of committee.
Yeah, and Hunt is no longer in Cleveland.
Yeah, he got traded already?
No, he's a free agent, right?
Oh, he's a free agent. Yeah.
Not on the team right now. So that really just shows you, the running back market for this late in the offseason is wild. Not even including Saquon and Jacobs, but Fournette is a free agent. Zeke is a free agent. Dalvin Cook, of course, is a free agent. And Kareem Hunt is a free agent. So those are four guys, not that long ago, that were really producing at a pretty high level, and yet they are nowhere to be seen. When it comes to the Giants, I mean, I think what they offered him was a pretty fair deal. If you want to tell Saquon, based on everything that he's done in his first 5 years, that he's going to be making the same amount of money as Nick Chubb, the same amount of money as Derrick Henry, who, in my opinion, his peak was probably as good as any running back I've ever seen in the last 5-10 years. I got to be honest, if I was Saquon, I'd maybe consider taking that deal, especially because I mentioned it. He was drafted number 2 overall. He's already made $38 million. When Deebo Samuel was holding out from the 49ers camp last year, I kind of understood it because he was a 3rd-round pick that wasn't making a ton of money, and he literally carried the 49ers to the NFC Championship game 2 years ago by himself. He dragged them there. Saquon Barkley Yeah, the Giants made the playoffs last year. They won a playoff game, which was impressive. But Daniel Jones, he was, in my opinion, the primary reason why they won that playoff game against Minnesota. He outplayed Kirk Cousins. And Saquon Barkley has already made $38 million. Like, if you're making the same amount of money as Derrick Henry or the same amount of money as Nick Chubb, like, why not just take it? I do think he's being a little greedy. I do.
I mean, if I was his agent, I would take the money at some point. It just wouldn't be now. Like, I don't really see, from that perspective, why, there'd be an issue as far as, him holding out. Like, yes, eventually I would not advise him to sit out. That'd be the worst thing he could do for his career.
How much money should he be looking for? Like,
around that. But hey, at the end of the day, when you are a player and it comes to business and, mapping out your worth and mapping out the market and trying to balance both of them, you do what you do. You get as much money as you can until you cannot. And when we get to a situation where you have to go to training camp and you have to, go and reunite with the team, then you take the money. Because I don't think that offer is going anywhere. So you might as well bargain. And then if the Giants don't budge, then you take that $12 million. And if they do, more money in your pocket. That's how I would leave it. But we'll see what happens. I think Saquon Barkley will be back. I'll be shocked if there's any running back RB1 that's lining up for the Giants not named Saquon. I think he'll be back.
Please like and subscribe for all the up-to-date content. You've been slinging shows left and right, slinging content left and right. Please don't miss anything. If you do, like, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a question, something you may want to answer, something you may have. All ideas are great ideas. Nothing's a dumb question.